Welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel.
And I'm Jaren Decker.
And we'll be your host today. Today on Anything Joe's, we are just focused on one task, and that's recapping our amazing weekend at Winterfest. This is the third Winterfest being held by the Kentuckiana G.I. Joe show fellas. It's their smaller, vendor-focused wintertime show. And this is the first time that they've had it at their new location, which is actually located in Shepherdsville, which is just a little bit outside of Louisville, Kentucky, if you're not familiar with the area. Probably about, I say about 40 minutes from where we're at. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So just a slightly longer journey for us, but I mean, still basically in our backyard, and nothing that we would ever miss. I feel like every year we have better and better experiences at these shows, and this year is no exception. We had a great time. We got a lot of great stuff, and we're going to break down some of the experiences we had, some of the things we got. Let's start with the trip. So our buddy Joel from Order of Battle, who I'm sure you guys know, has been on the show many times, he was kind of our ride-along partner this year because he flew in from New York. Our usual wheelman Jaren picked him up, and then they came and picked me up. Now, you guys might know this about me, but I work a third shift job, so I had to request off for this day, but I typically work the day before the Friday night. Like, they call it something weird, like kernel package or something, but it's basically like early bird the night before.
I believe this year they called it the Snowman. I heard the guy that was running it called the Snowman for the Winterfest.
Okay, but it's the early bird, basically. And if you've heard us talk about these shows before, or conventions in general, we learned in real time that you miss out on a tremendous amount of product if you don't go to these, because there are people that, it's funny that, you would consider people that go to the late night event the hardcore collectors, and yet the people that come to these events are always complete strangers to me.
Not only do you see a lot of things, like some of the kind of higher end or more rare pieces on a Friday night that normally are gone, but also, like, if you're there for the Friday night, you get just a great time afterwards. This was the first event held at this new venue. And so there are some things we got to figure out, like areas where we can all hang out like we normally do. But those Friday night hangouts with people that are in the community and that are, enjoy the same things that we do. And, we'll talk more on it, but we got to meet some people this year. And it was just a phenomenal experience, really.
I can't find the specific information, so don't hold me accountable on this. But I think it's like, I know it's $30 for the full access because that's what we paid. I think it's $20 to get in on the early bird, which is an hour. It starts at 9 a.m. and then everybody gets in at 10 a.m. for like $10 maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So anyway, you're already out $20, and it's a really short event. Is almost never like publicized well at all. It seems like if you go in there, like just now, not only could I not find the pricing, I couldn't find the hours. There's a little bit of like, I hesitate to say secret, but it's not something that's publicized very openly. It's only after years of going to these events that we've learned. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. We learned firsthand that if you didn't really go to the late night events, you got, a lot of people came in and cherry picked the really, really good stuff. The stuff that's either priced super aggressively or perhaps is very rare, like maybe the only one there. And we kind of swore to ourselves, hey, we're never again. We're going to go, because every time we've gone, it's held true. We snatch up stuff that, we reflect Saturday morning and go, oh yeah, there's, this stuff would have never made it. Like, I'm glad I got it when I did. And this year was maybe no exception. This year was definitely no exception, because I went hard right off the bat. I was like, I'm not taking any chances with this stuff. I'm scooping everything up that I think I'm interested in. And yeah, I bought so much stuff. We'll get into that here in a minute. So the new venue is, if you've ever been to the Kentuckiana show or an older Winterfest, is so much better. The old event was at a Hilton Garden Inn, and while it was a perfectly fine location, and overall the parking wasn't ideal, but it wasn't too problematic, and it was still really really close to where we lived at that time. It's probably like 20 minutes or less. They had all the rooms are very small, so on a regular Kentuckiana show, they have 3 separate rooms and there's vendors in every room, and it felt very disconnected because you were just kind of wandering the hallways from room to room. Very first year when I went by myself, I didn't even know there was a third room until the show was almost over. So it was a real weird disjointed feeling. It's not that it just felt weird to not have everybody in the same room. And for Winterfests, which again are supposed to be smaller vendor-focused shows, they would only use one of those rooms. So you'd have maybe a dozen vendors, maybe 15, somewhere in there, pretty small amount, the usual guys, but they would all be kind of crammed in one room, and it would be hard to look through what they had just because they had to like cram so much product in a small space. The new venue's not like that at all. It's one big room, and probably it was the most vendors they've ever had for Winterfest. And it was great. I mean, like their parking was good. There's a hotel that's literally right beside it which we stayed at, or I stayed at, and Joel and I stayed at, and it was. I mean, I think a lot of it. I think it was an improvement in every area except that it's slightly further away from our house. Jaren, do you have any thoughts about the venue overall?
I absolutely loved it. It is a little farther, and next year, or for Kentuckiana in the summer, I really might consider staying at the hotel, because it's just far enough where driving after hangout on Friday night is a little brutal to then also try to get back for Saturday morning. But the venue is so big, and it was really open. It didn't feel crowded. I think at Kentuckiana last year, we got to the point where multiple times me and you just kind of like jumped into the lobby because we were like, man, it's getting a little crowded in there. And there was not really any point where I was like, oh my gosh, there's nowhere to fit anyone else. So I see potential for the event space. It also has a couple of rooms, a couple side areas, meeting areas that, if they wanted to, they could always expand if they had to. But it's really cool to see that they did take that next step, because we didn't think that was going to happen. I believe on one of our last recaps, we talked about like if they would ever grow the space, and we were both kind of like, well, it doesn't seem like they want to, and they might not have had a choice. It could have been, a conflict with the venue that they'd previously had, but they definitely seemed very happy about the new venue, and I was thrilled with it. I would say there was at least notably 6 or 7 vendors that I remember interacting with that I had not seen at any show previously. And that number is probably higher. It's just we didn't get involved in the 12-inch shows.
Yeah, I'll break down the vendors a little bit more specifically when we kind of talk about what we were purchasing, because you're right. There were some new people there, and there were some people with some interesting product acquisitions. I'll say it like that until we get into it. Let me back up to my story. So I get home Friday morning. I get off work at 6. I'm ready to lay down about 8. That's after I've showered, had breakfast. I did a little pre-organization, but I was pretty unprepared. No shocker there. And Jaren was picking Joel up from the airport, and then the plan was that they were going to come do whatever they were going to do and then come pick me up, which turned out to be earlier than I expected. And also, this is so silly, but I was so excited that I was having trouble sleeping. I'm very much like a small child still when it comes to G.I. Joe. It's part of the reason that I still love it so passionately to this day, is that, this stuff is like, it's almost like pre-Christmas for me. Like I get like excited to see all the stuff, and what am I going to find? What am I going to buy? And then seeing people that I only see at these events, which is a huge deal for me. Like some of the people that I love hanging out with the most are all going to be at this show at once. So I was already kind of like having trouble sleeping. I was jittery. Had a lot of stuff on my mind. And then I've had maybe an hour of sleep, and then I get the message that, hey, we're on the way. Go ahead and get up. So I knew from the get-go it was going to be another zany experience for old Greg. So they come to the house. I do a little bit of last minute prep. I'm just taking some very brief notes on what I think I might need. We hit the road, and before we, this is still pretty early on Friday. We decided to hit the what's the name of the antique mall? Do you know the full title?
It's South Louisville Antique and Toy Mall.
Got it.
That is the official title.
A place that Jaren and I have been, a handful of times, although it had been quite a while since we had went. So, and Joel had never been there, so we thought we'd hit that place up, see what they got, while we were killing time before we loaded into the hotel. So we hit the antique mall, and we have a good time. We look around. They have a lot of G.I. Joe stuff there. I won't say that the stuff that's there is very aggressively priced, but they have some fair deals, I think. We've certainly both bought stuff from them over the years, but knowing that this show was, the actual convention was just mere hours away, I didn't want to buy anything, and then immediately find it, $20 cheaper there. So I was like, if I don't see anything that I gotta have, I won't get it. Well, it just so happens that I saw something that I gotta have. Who knew? There's a vendor that is specifically, he only has G.I. Joe stuff in his booth. So when we got closer to it, I knew to kind of hit it and look at it hard. And if you listen to our last episode, I'm riding a pretty high wave of Eagle Force love right now. And he had one Eagle Force figure, and wouldn't you know it, it's the one Eagle Force figure that I have been actively seeking for several months. His character's name is Ultima Thule, and I think he's from Series 3, maybe earlier than that, but it's a figure that I skipped on because at that time I was only buying verbatim G.I. Joe looking Eagle Force figures, but this figure is so cool looking. He looks a lot like
Red Hood.
Yes, he looks a lot like the Red Hood from the Batman continuity right now. It's kind of like a leather jacket, a cool red helmet. And I want him because I want to integrate him into the G.I. Joe universe as a mercenary or a Cobra operative or something like that. I haven't really ironed it out, but I'd been looking for him for quite a while, and they had one there, and he was still on the card, although obviously those cards are resealable, and it was $30, which is almost, basic retail essentially, and it was 20%. Everything in his booth was 20% off, so I actually maybe got him for less than he would have been when he came out. And he's much more expensive now. They had a plan to reissue him down the road at some point, but I was like, great, now I don't have to wait. I can get him right now, and I can, start working with him. After that, we went back to the hotel. We got loaded in. I kind of slept a little bit before the show opened up. Then we made our way down for the actual Friday night event. So we get into the Friday night event, and basically from here on out is we're going to start talking about vendors and what we bought. I can't possibly remember what I bought in what order. So we'll kind of do some Cliff Notes versions of what I got as I remember it. But in terms of vendors, our two favorite vendors were there. That's Lost and Found Toys, which is Greg number 2's place, Greg and Natalie, and Destro's Toy Den with our good friend Todd Henderson. He was there. Couple of other regulars that I have dealt, the Marauders Task Force guys were there, and some other regular vendors that I've dealt with, but I don't know them on a first name basis like the other guys who are more than just vendors to me, are my very good friends. And I've become friends with them simply because of these shows, because we've done lots and lots of business with them. We started hanging out with them after the show. They're great people, and I love them both. I love all of them. So we started doing the rounds. We started looking. Jaren, do you happen to remember anything you bought Friday night? What your first purchase was?
Oh, I remember exactly what my first purchase was.
The benefits of youth. Please tell me.
So, going into this show, I was like, man, I'm going to look for like quality over quantity. I'm not going to buy a bunch of little things. I'm not going to spend a bunch of money because we're in the process of buying another house and moving, and I didn't want to, I don't like buying things if they're just going to immediately go into a box for storage. So I was like, saying all the good things. And then the first thing that I walked in is I saw old school comics right off the rip. And also going into it, I was like, I'm going to be like Jason from Order of Battle. I'm just going to walk around and talk. I'm really not even going to shop that much. Whatever. So the first thing I did was I walked in. The very first booth when you walked in had old comics. I'm not talking about like Silver Age. I'm talking like original Golden Age comics. Like these things are like Action Comics, Detective Comics, and he had a Fawcett Comics. He had a couple different Fawcett Comics, Captain Marvel, and he had, I want to say 10 or 11 different ones. And I looked through, found one that was within a price that I felt okay with, because some of them were really crazy expensive, just because they were a little bit older. But I found one that I liked. I bought the December one. It had a really cool cover, and it was perfect. So I pulled the trigger immediately and didn't look back. So I'm not disappointed that I did it. It is a Grail level comic for me. Like, I've always wanted an original Fawcett Comics Captain Marvel. I love the character, have some fun, interesting history with him, and it was one that I was just like, I have to have this. So I knew as soon as I saw it that, well, I'm not going anywhere without this comic. This is one of these is coming home with me.
And this is the Captain Marvel Adventures, right? Is that the full title of it? I'm doing a little work on it right now. I'm doing a little research on it.
Yeah, so it's from 1949. So yeah, it's Captain Marvel Adventures, issue 103, if you want to look it up. If you guys want to Google it, or I'll just actually send a picture to Greg if you watch it on our YouTube.
Casually browsing the stuff that's like key issues, every issue's like hundreds of dollars. Doesn't matter what's happening in it, it seems like.
Yeah, and you're talking, this thing's what, 80 years old now?
Sure.
It's my dad was born in 53, and this was 4 years older than him.
I'm a huge comic enthusiast, and even I hadn't really seen books like this before. Of course, age-wise, this is a little bit older than what I normally can get my hands on, but the condition of the book is in amazing shape. Kind of wild that a vendor would set up. You don't really see a whole lot of comics at these shows, so it's interesting that this guy chose to bring stuff of this era to what is essentially branded as a toy show. I have, I guess, kind of incorrectly been branding it as a G.I. Joe show, but it seems like more and more people are attending it for toys of all sorts. As you'll soon hear when Jaren breaks down what he bought, very, very little G.I. Joe stuff being purchased. Lots of other types of stuff there. Not the only person that went there that I saw loaded up on Star Wars stuff, amongst other things. But yeah, the show it's vendor focused, but it's not specifically G.I. Joe focused. Is still definitely the largest 12-inch G.I. Joe show out there between the two of them. I can't think of anything that even comes remotely close. But as you'll learn when I start to break down my list, there's still plenty of vintage and modern era G.I. Joe stuff to buy as well. It's just, I guess because it's my focus, I've always thought that's what it is. But there was a lot of He-Man stuff there. There was a lot of Star Wars stuff there.
It's starting to get quite a bit of Turtles. I saw a decent chunk of Turtles starting to pop back up. Some original, like, Minton card figures. A lot of Last Ronin, just because it's, very popular. That would probably be the only other thing that I thought was at least at multiple booths.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I saw, like, that big Galactus that they crowdfunded not that long ago. So there's a lot of different stuff. And, of course, like I said, there's tons of 12-inch G.I. Joe stuff there as well. Okay, so you got your Captain Marvel. Did you buy anything else that night? Do you remember?
If I did, it was one of the small things that I bought that I just got because it was a stinking cheap deal.
So I made, a handful of purchases that night, and then we went back to the room, talked with Todd from Destro's Toy Den a little while. I don't know if we're going to have that audio or if Order of Battle is going to keep that audio, but the four of us talked to him as I was falling asleep. But being forced to stay awake and talk. It's by far the loopiest interview I've ever done. When we listen to it, it'll be fresh to me as well as our listeners. So yeah, it was kind of an early. Well, I'm going to use air quotes. It was kind of an early night compared to some other nights that we've had there. The one thing that was lacking is that we weren't really able to find a common area for everybody to hang out. So everybody was kind of in their separate rooms, or it was a little disjointed. We're going to try to work on that next year. We were used to hanging out in the hotel lobby at the Hilton Garden because they have like a little bar / dining area, and we'd all kind of lump up there. Nobody really seemed to care. So but we didn't have that. So I was in bed pretty early. Everybody else was kind of out and about doing their own thing. And Jaren had obligations Saturday morning. So I stayed at the hotel and Jaren went home. Saturday morning arrives and Joel and I wake up right away. We are at the show at 9 a.m. for early bird, and we just kind of get right to it. So now I could kind of start talking about the stuff that I bought because we're into the crux of the show. I can't break down everything that I bought because some of it there's a lot. I bought a lot of what really kind of common vehicles, and if you know, I've said this a lot also, but I'm a vehicle focused on these shows. I want to save money on shipping, especially when you're looking for large items. And so I always feel like even an okay priced vehicle is still significantly cheaper than trying to buy it off eBay because the shipping really does greatly inflate how much you're paying. So in the interest of time, I'm going to just list off a handful of things that I picked up that are pretty common things. I didn't overpay for any of this stuff. I don't remember the pricing on a lot of this common stuff. It was cheap enough that I thought, okay, I'll take it. Here we go. I bought almost all exclusive vintage vehicles also. I bought a water moccasin. I bought a Cobra Asp. I bought a Cobra Night Landing Craft. I bought a Cobra Rage. I bought a Law. I think that's what it's called, the little standalone machine gun deal. I bought that little protector pack that you could hold 3 figures on that clips into your belt. I'd been wanting one of those for a while. I bought a Chameleon, Zartan's Chameleon speeder thingy. I bought the Tri-Blaster. I bought the Ammo Weapons Depot. I bought the, what's the Street Fighter Badger thing called? Crimson Cruiser?
Yes, it is.
I picked up a Crimson Cruiser. I picked up a Cobra Flat Pod, aka Trouble Bubble. And I think that's all the common stuff. So I racked up a bunch of little things. Oh, I got the Ninja Cycle, which is like a light era Ninja Force vehicle that was for Snake Eyes. So I got a lot. I bought a lot of little common things that I thought that I needed. It turns out, as I'm doing my research today, that I had some more of this stuff than I thought. I just had not. My checklist was out of date, so that's on me. Oh, I bought a bunch of those. I've been buying those little backpack kits that have like the radar dish that spins around when you wind it up, or the tiny little one-person helicopter that the propeller spins around, the rope walker. I've been trying to grab those up for a couple of years. I'm not a big fan of them, but it's stuff that I need on my vehicle list, so I've been knocking those out. I found a dude that was selling Creo figures, the G.I. Joe Creo figures, and I've been trying to complete that collection because we finally have a display case in our game room in my house where we were actually putting them together with like Legos, and I'm trying to get all those figures. So I bought like maybe 10 of those, which does bring that checklist pretty close to completion now. So yeah, I bought a bunch of little stuff. Most of that stuff was complete. I actually bought the Chameleon skier thingy just for like, I needed the handlebars, and there's like a little weird motor piece that goes underneath it. I needed both of those things from my existing one to complete it. So a lot of times you see stuff like that, and if you can't find one or two specific parts, it starts to boil down to, I might as well just buy another one. And in this instance, that's what this was. I think it was like $20. I thought, it's going to cost me $20 just to buy these two pieces by themselves. I'm just going to get it, knock it out, and like usual, combine it with my other one and make a complete one. Of the vendors, I bought a lot of different stuff. Actually, one of the things I remember now as it's coming back to me, I met this guy Friday night. I don't know the name of his store because when I PayPal'd him, it showed up something completely different. It was like painting and roofing or something unusual like that. I guess this is his side hustle. So this guy had 3 Crossfires for sale. Now, if you're not familiar with the Crossfire, it's the remote control car that came with Rumbler, and is a pretty expensive piece that I've been looking for a couple of years now at least. But because it's so prohibitively expensive, I usually flake out at the last minute. So this guy had 3 of them, and they were in various stages of completion. Like there was one that was pretty barren, and I think it was 150. He had one that was kind of in the mid-range, and that was 200. Then he had one that was probably pretty close to completion at 300. Well, I'm always looking for the bigger, better deal. So I took the one in the middle, the one that was $200. He told me that it worked, although I wasn't able to test it and still haven't been able to. And I'm not sure how optimistic I am about that, but I was willing to roll the dice. And it is missing. I need to do a little bit of work on it. There's a large kind of like vamp turret-esque gun on the back that has got a broken handle and is missing the piece that goes on top of it. There's a antenna that kind of houses the reception for the RC part of it. And the antenna is missing, so the wire is just loose. And it's missing the battery cover for the remote control. But I did get the remote control, so that's something. Other than that, I think everything else is there. It didn't come with a rumbler, but I have a rumbler, so I wasn't sweating that. And it's in pretty good shape overall. I'm just going to have to do a little bit of digging to find those, 3S pieces to bring it up to completion. If it doesn't work, that's fine. It wasn't like I ever planned on driving this thing around anyway. As a matter of fact, when we got back to the hotel, Joel was like, hey, whatever you do, don't set this down. That's the end of the statement. Don't set it down because the tires will go flat like permanently. It'll be like the letter C essentially, like they'll go flat over time. And sure enough, I picked it up off the counter and one of the front wheels had already started to kind of like flatten out. So the advice there is either, display it with the wheels not touching the ground, which is how I display my Defiant because those wheels break off under their own pressure over time. Or take the wheels off, which I did not want to do if I could avoid it. So right now I don't have anywhere. I'm reorganizing my vehicles because I bought so much new stuff, but I'm going to have to find something to kind of display it that keeps those wheels free floating. I'm super happy to get it. It was one of the big things on my checklist. Like I said, I've been looking for it for quite a while, and I'm happy to have it. Even in this state, it has both of the front guns, both of the missiles, so it's certainly in good enough condition to display. And I will complete it, probably this year if I can find the stuff that I need for it. Now, as far as testing it to see if it works, that's a whole other ball of wax. I don't think you have to have the battery cover for the remote for it to work, but it takes kind of like, I think it's like 5 AA's, and then the remote also takes a 9-volt. And I don't exactly have that many batteries laying around my house, so it's on my to-do list to check it off at some point. But I got it. It was one of the big finds from the show. I'm happy to have it. It was something that I was wondering if I was ever going to check off. And it was one of the, 3 big MVP vehicles that I've been looking for a while. The next thing I purchased was I got 2 separate deals on Tiger Force stuff. I don't have any complete Tiger Force stuff in my collection because it's a repaint. It's never been. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, at the last show, I picked up the Cobra Rat, which is the Rattler, the Tiger Force Rattler. That was one of the first things I added in that was complete. I had 2 Tiger Force vehicles when I was a kid. The Tiger, I'm not going to know I never remember the code names, but it's the Snowcat. I guess it's called the Tiger Cat. I had a Tiger Cat when I was a kid, and I had the water moccasin, the Tiger Force water moccasin. But they were my childhood ones, and while I do still have them, they were both in pretty incomplete states. So I found 2 separate deals for a total of 4 Tiger Force vehicles, and they're, from the low to the high. I found a Tiger Paw. The Tiger Paw was actually the first thing I passed on at Friday night. They had it for $40 at Lost and Found Toys. I thought, I definitely want this. I'm going to come back because I always buy a lot of stuff from Greg. Well, I came back and it was gone. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's Friday night and I've already missed out. And he had another one. And I was like, well, okay, fool me once, shame on me. I'll take this right now. And I also went ahead and made a deal for the Tiger Fly, which is the Dragonfly, the Tiger Force Dragonfly, probably one of the next most expensive Tiger Force items out there. And it is complete. It is a little wobbly on the wings, but I'm not going to knock it. It has all the missiles. It has the chin gun. Oh, actually, there is one small flaw. That gun that juts off to the side, the like weird little Gatling gun, the peg has broken off in the skid, but everything else is there otherwise. So the gun is the same gun that, I could put a very tiny drop of glue and I could fix it. I haven't decided that that's the route I want to go, but it's all there. I bought a Tiger Force water moccasin, even though I have one here. And wouldn't you know it, this one isn't complete either. I didn't realize till I got it home, but there were two things wrong with this Tiger. It's not called the Tiger moccasin, surely, but the gun cannons that go on the left and right side of the front, one of them had a broken peg. And this guy had the wrong gun on the actual turret. It was the turret for the Tiger Paw. It's like a smaller double barrel gun, and the water moccasin has a much longer gun. And then lastly, there's two like little guides that go on the back of the propeller that shift left and right. One of those is missing the pegs that actually connects it to the housing. Well, luckily when I got back to the house, I was able to find, I had the longer barrel gun, so I was able to integrate that. And I had, of my two cannons, one of them had an unbroken peg. And miraculously, I was able to extract it from my childhood one without breaking that peg and put it into the other one. So now that's good. So I'm literally only missing that one little guide, which I should be able to knock out sometime in the near future. And then lastly, the last Tiger Force thing I got was whatever the Tiger Vamp is, and it's totally not called that either. You can tell I know very little about Tiger Force stuff because I've never been an active collector of it, but I am now, obviously. And it's probably one of my favorites of the run. It's got a cool like eyeball and grin across the front of it. The paint scheme seems to work on it a little better than the others. I think it might have been missing one of the black gas cans, but everything else is there and it works really good. And I do really, really like it. Jaren, I'm going to let you take a turn so I don't keep talking. Tell me a couple of things that you picked up.
This was a weird show for me because of the house thing, and also I'm trying not to buy as much vintage because it's just as cool as I think it is. I don't have that same connection that you and a lot of the other collectors do, so I find myself liking it, but I'm like, man, like I would put more classifieds on display before I would put most of my figures. Now, some of the vehicles are a little different because I love the designs of the vehicles. But so I was like, well, I'm not going to buy a bunch of vintage. I'm not going to buy, and I'm not a modern collector. And so I was like, well, I'm only going to focus on classifieds. And I have most of the classifieds. The only one that I didn't have going into it was the Crimson Guard. So I got a couple Crimson Guard, and I did not think I was going to like them. But man, they are beautiful. They did the thing that all of my favorite classifieds do, where I can put everything I can keep their hands empty, and they can still have all of their accessories with them. They have a place for their gun, they have a place for their pistol, they have a place for their knife, a place for their sword. Actually, 2 different places for their swords. So it just made me very happy that they put that thought into it, and I love the design of them. And so that was my Joe pickup. That was the only Joes that I picked up. And then I don't know if you've ever bought anything from Storm Collectibles.
I don't think so.
I hadn't either. And they did a run for Gears of War 4 and 5, where they did a few different figures. And I'm a big Gears of War. Gears of War is a video game. It's an Xbox exclusive, if you don't know. Kind of like a post-apocalyptic, but in a different Earth. And there's these monsters that come up from underground. And it's just big, beefy dudes that shoot monsters. It's a very simplistic story, but I enjoyed it. And so they had a character from it that they did for Storm Collectibles that was a GameStop exclusive, and the figure was originally, I wanted to say, like $100, and I just couldn't bite the bullet. There was something always holding me back, and then it went on clearance, and it was like, I want to say like $60. I just couldn't do it, and I ended up picking this figure that I believe was originally $100 up for $20. I love it, having it, because of my connection to the game. But I'm very glad that I got it for a good deal, because it's okay. But it's maybe it's probably closer to being in scale with like the DC Multiverse, like a 7-inch scale. But it's not really any better than a Hasbro figure, like a G.I. Joe Classified. The only thing that it is better is that it's probably like a deluxe because it comes with multiple weapons, different hands, and different heads. But I love it. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But I'm very glad that I got it at $20. Because if I had bought it at $100, I don't think I would have loved it.
I didn't really get a good look at that, but I will like to check that out down the line. I'll just send me some pictures put on the YouTube.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, what else did you get? Beforehand,
Joel was like, hey man, like, really, really appreciate you picking me up. So he got me a G.I. Joe Classified Bazooka, which is one of the ones that I didn't have. And I love this figure. I love the body that they used for him. I love the accessories that he comes with and everything. It's just his face. Mine looks like his face got like melted almost. Like he's got a weird side eye. He looks like Sloth from the Goonies almost. Like the one eye is just too far over on the side. Like it'd be different if it was just like angled to the side, like he was giving him a side eye, but it almost looks like his eyeball is on the side of his face. It's probably the worst classified face that I've had. And
that's a bummer.
It is a bummer, but I do really like him. The next step, if this doesn't work, is I'm going to buy some Gridiron, like a different helmet from Gridiron Studios that has the glasses or the visor over it. And then I'll love it because I can't see his ugly eyeballs. And then I normally like to buy something from a line that I hadn't bought before, like an ongoing line. So at Joe Fest when I went, I got some of the Warriors of the Animal Kingdom. And so on this one, I was like, man, I want to get a Mythic Legions. And so I bought 2 different ones, well, 2.5 kind of technically. I got the Mythic Legions Dwarf Deluxe Legion Builder. So that came with a couple different weapons and then a shield. And he's one of their like small figures. Mythic Legions is really cool because you can swap everything. Shoulder pauldrons, you can swap heads, everything really. And then as long as they're in the same scale, you can just swap those pieces, arms, legs, everything. And then I got the Mythic Legions Half Giant Deluxe Legion Builder. So I would say that the dwarf is maybe 5 inches tall, whereas the half giant is 10 inches, 11 inches maybe. They do a really cool job scaling it, and they fit everything. The posability is pretty good for someone in giant plate armor. But as a fan of D&D and things like that, the fantasy setting is really cool. To go along with the half giant, I also bought they call it Ogre Scale accessory pack, and it came with a different head, couple different weapons, couple different pauldrons, different shield. And so I bought that, and like the helmet, it's like a big old bearded helmet with elk antlers on the side, and it just makes him look even bigger and more intimidating. And so those are ones that I got, and I will maybe get 1 or 2 more Mythic Legions. It's just not a line that I'll continue to collect like wholeheartedly, just because of all the other lines that I'm already involved in. But maybe 1 or 2 guys for these guys to fight, make them like a buddy cop duo with my little guy, my big guy. The sculpting on these are absolutely second to none. They're absolutely amazing. The little details everywhere, and the fact that they've found a way to make sure that they can still be posed enough to not just feel like they're a statue is incredible.
Speaking of non-G.I. Joe pickups, there was a vendor there that had been at previous shows that had a crazy amount of deals on their inventory. To put that in perspective, they had most existing classified figures from Zorana previously for $15 each, or 5 for $50. That's $10 a pop, significantly lower than retail. So we checked this vendor out, and I did buy some stuff from them. What I bought was they have the Valaverse Action Force weapons packs. They had weapons. I bought Weapons Pack Alpha, Weapons Pack Charlie, and the Backpack Gear Kit. $5 each, which is a steal and a half. But it didn't end there, because they also had 2 toy collectibles on display there. One of them is a gigantic Infinity Gauntlet from the Marvel Universe, and also a hammer of Thor. That's weird. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. They're not like prop level good, but they're way better than any regular toy you'd find. The Infinity Gauntlet, which when I originally saw it retailed at $100, you put your hand inside it. It has like little rings that you put your fingers around, and then you can bend each individual figure, and it works pretty well. It also lights up and makes a lot of noise. And Thor's hammer does the same. Thor's hammer has like a little stand. You pick it up and it makes like a very loud, like thunder and lightning kind of effect, and it lights up, but it's pretty cool. So anyway, they had $40 on each one of those, which is, again, significantly less than retail. So I was like, hey, man, you got $40 on each of these. How much if I want to buy both of them? And the dude goes, I'll let you have both of them for $40. You're not going to find that deal anywhere else. Full stop, man. I know $100 retail, you buy it secondhand, you might expect it to get it for half price, but $20 each, you wouldn't find it for that in a yard sale or a flea market. So I was like, man, I have no place for these. I do not need them. I will take them. So I bought both of those huge things, and I got that Valaverse kit. And I mean, there was people buy those classifieds, as you can imagine, left and right. I mean, they had stuff as far back as Red Ninjas. I mean, $10 a pop. If you buy 5, who wouldn't go crazy? Now, word on the grapevine is this guy said he had bought this inventory from a retailer that was liquidating. And the gossip line says, and I can't confirm this obviously, that this is old Dorkside Toys inventory, which is crazy, of course, because nobody was able, the Dorkside Toys went down in a ball of fire because they just balked on everything. They stopped fulfilling orders. They weren't giving refunds. It was a whole mess. So to see this stock here at a greatly reduced price was wild to me. Absolutely stunned. But yeah, they had stuff. They had lots of different stuff actually, and people were, as you can expect, were racking up. They had a huge box of figures, just like random Marvel Legends figures and whatnot, and it was like $60 for the box. I bought this crazy gauntlet, and it was like, I got to take this back to the hotel room now. I mean, there's absolutely no way I can carry it around. I said, maybe I'll buy this for my daughter, because it's just a bunch of random superhero figures. Seem to be prominently female oriented. I thought maybe I'll buy this for her. She'll have a ton of fun with it. She doesn't care about any of the little details like articulation or really even who the character is. Well, from the hotel trip back, which is probably less than 10 minutes, it was gone. So I was like, okay, well, that decides it for me. I really only got maybe 3 other major things to talk about. So I'll go ahead and knock them out. I picked up a Sky Patrol Shark, which I had, but the one I had literally nothing else. No bombs, no canopy, no nothing. This one was very shiny. I mean, like, it was in really good shape. And over at the toy department, I also picked up the Night Force Shark, which I don't think I have any Night Force vehicles because they're all preposterously priced. So this is probably the low-end entry point for that. It was $75. I do remember that. And it is so clean. Like, it's amazing the condition that it's in. So no regrets there. I'm very happy with it. There was a lot of Night Force stuff there, and I mean, cost money just to look at it. This stuff was so prohibitively expensive. I had thought about it initially, like maybe trying to wheel and deal and get a couple of the little ones, like the Night Force Triple T or the Night Force. I think it's the Persuader. Don't hold me to that, but there was some. I don't want to say affordable because they're not, but low end Night Force stuff. And I kind of flipped and went into the Tiger Force realm instead because I felt I could get a lot more for it. Anyway, I got this Nightshade. It's beautiful. It's a great addition. Finally one of the heavy hitters in the Night Force line. As I'm kind of closing the door on Tiger Force, I've really wrapped up basically most of the stuff from that collection. That's also where I got my original water moccasin, which I did not own at all, so that was a good find. Then towards the end of the show, I doubled back to Lost and Found Toys again and made a bulk deal on 2 vehicles that I had in my collection, but that are both broken in a fundamentally destructive way. I bought a Cobra Bug because there's a small pod on the side of the front of the Cobra Bug that detaches, kind of like its own little like submersible that can go off and explore. Well, I have a broken tab on mine, and also I have a broken tab where one of the missiles go on the side, which basically you can repair that probably, but not only am I not really capable of that, I've been shying away from repair or gluing anything at this point. I don't know that I'll always feel that way, but right now I was like, I'm just going to try to get another one. So I got a Bug, and everything that it was missing, which was minimal, it was missing the missiles that go on the little like jet ski deals that come out. One of the chin turrets, there's two chin turrets that go underneath the two front areas of the bug. One of those was broken, and I had all that on my already broken one. So I was like, yes, absolutely, I want that. I brought it home and I was able to complete it. It needs to be clean, but it's complete finally after quite a while. The other thing I got was a Night Raven. I had gotten a Night Raven in a bundle. I don't remember if it was from the guy that we dealt with in Louisville or somebody. I think it was from a previous deal. And I had been restoring it right up until I found out that there's these weird red, I don't know if they're supposed to be missiles, but there's these weird red discs, not discs, they're like jagged little pointed almost triangles that go underneath the rear wings. And on the one that I had, the tab that held that on was basically broken. I don't think you'd be able to get the part to stay on there without glue. And it was in pretty heavily played with condition. So Greg at Lost and Found had one of those on display also. And it was, again, as just like that Nightshade, is in a state that most of the vehicles I buy are not in. It's so clean, so sleek. I didn't really mess with the operational part of it to like see how the canopy part works, because that kind of descends, but after that gets wear and tear, it doesn't function quite as well. And it was complete and came with a Strato Viper, which was well superior to the one that I had. The one I had tremendous wear on his visor. I got both of those for $200, and that's almost like, Greg was cutting me a great deal, and I had already spent hundreds of dollars with Greg on Friday night, so that was a solid deal. It was missing nothing. So the Night Raven I have, I'm going to piece out and probably sell that part slot as just repair your own with this one. So I'll do the same with that bug. Right now I'm letting my daughter drive that bug around and just do whatever, but at some point I'll strip it down and make a piece, a part slot of it to help recoup the money that I spent, on a vehicle that I already owned, but obviously neither of those were complete. And I had kind of given up on them once I found out they were broken. There's a lot of pieces on the bug that are really frail, I've learned. And like that pod specifically, if the tab isn't broken, it has a rudder in the back, and that is pretty prone to breaking. And so are those little twin guns that I was talking about. The twin gun that he had one that was broken, and I had one that was broken as well. So it's fortunate that there's two. So I was able to take the good one off of mine and put it on that one, which I've already done. I didn't break anything on the removal process. I've had pretty good luck so far with taking other stuff off and putting it back on the other ones. So I picked both of those up, both great finds and both complete. Mark them off the list, ready to move on. The last thing I have to talk about that I picked up from this huge lot is, and this is the big one. So we were at Marauders Task Force, and the way the Marauders Task Force booth works, at least the ones that we interact with, is they're represented Marauders. They have the typical Marauders spread, and they also have their personal inventory, which they kind of bring and scatter around the area in boxes, and they wheel and deal from there with their personal stock. They had an item that I had seen at least at the last show, maybe even before that. It's an item that is a grill item for me, and is right up there with, I would say, the Rowdy Roddy Piper con figure, which I have been looking for years, but I'm always hesitant to pull the trigger because it's not a very good looking figure, but it hits the one that, I've got one true weakness, and it's figures that I don't own any other version of, or more likely, as in the case of Piper, add this figure as well. It's the only version of the figure that's ever been produced. This figure is the con exclusive Hotwire with mech. If you're not familiar with Hotwire, he is labeled as a bat repairman, essentially. He's like a bat technician. He wears a lab coat. He's got kind of like Dr. Venom vibes. His head is so bad. It's a repainted Blanca from Street Fighter, if you can picture that in your head. And it reflects that. It's so weird. Think of Blanca and now colored and flesh colored. And it's creative, I'll give him that, but it's not a good fit. I looked up some information on this guy. I've studied Hotwire for a while. I know a lot about him. His file card suggests that he's supposed to be a descendant of Dr. Frankenstein, for example. And what I'm seeing is, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but this figure is supposed to be limited to only 500 pieces, which is crazy. That's an extremely low run. So, and he's, as you can imagine, is a very high price item. As a matter of fact, when I entered the negotiation phase of this purchase, I tried to find sold listings, and I don't remember what the window is on eBay. I think it might be 90 days. It might be 180 days. There were no sold listings of hot wire. It's just not something that comes up very often. When it does, yes, it goes for a lot. So I looked at this figure. It's unopened with the mech and the figure. So you already know you're in for some trouble. I flip it over, and the price tag originally had said $800.
Oh, gosh.
Someone had written over top of that $600. And I thought, oh. And so in my head, I was like, you know what? If I can get him down to $500, I'm going to take it. And let me go ahead and interrupt myself and say that I opened a line of credit for this show. We talk about finances a lot on here because I want to be transparent that I'm a lower middle class dad, trying to support his family and make ends meet. So a purchase like this is a big freaking deal for me. It is not a small purchase at all, and is probably one of the most expensive single items I've paid. So I opened this with the intent of being like, this is it for me. Like, for real, recent acquisitions for the next probably 6 months or longer is going to be a cricket noise, because I have got to completely go full stop for a while and pay this credit line off, because I didn't, I went in with a pretty good amount of money. I had been saving since December to have money specifically for this show. And I still was like, I need more, because I'm a filthy financial dog, and I don't know how to keep it under control. So when I tell you that, I went up to the guy, I said $500, and I kind of said it like that. I'm not a good negotiator when it gets down to something that I really want. And he paused for a second, and he was like, yeah, okay. And then I was like, also, do you take PayPal? Because there's no other way I can pay for this and get away with it. And he said, yes. Yeah, I'll take PayPal. So I used my line of credit from PayPal. I paid $500 for this. You are completely in your right, listener, to go, that's insane. You're an idiot. I get it, right? There's high-end stuff. It's like when I look at the Night Boomer, which is the Night Force Sky Striker, or I haven't looked at the Night Force Killer Whale much, but I've seen Night Boomers lately. And, it's low end, probably $700, high end, in the 4 digits. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I can ever pull the trigger on that. But the reality is I can. I know I'll be able to. There's really no threshold. If I think I'm getting a good deal on it, the price of it doesn't matter as much. I've always wanted this figure, and I knew there would maybe come a day where I would have an opportunity to buy it. I've certainly looked at it on eBay and bid on it before, thinking to myself, actually, I kind of hope I don't win this, because I don't know how I'll ever make it happen. So in my mind, I'm thinking $500, yes, is a fortune, is a crazy amount of money to spend, but probably the best deal I'll ever get on it. These aren't going down in value. This is an unopened version of it. Like, I just checked all the boxes. Right place, right time, right price, everything. So I bought it. I've got it, and I love it. I wanted it, and now I'm ecstatic to have it. It's getting into con stuff is you are entering a whole other world of financial misery, because the figures are rarely up to the quality of what you're paying for, but are simultaneously some of the only versions of those figures out there. There are a lot of con exclusive things that are, limited to, say, less than 3,000 pieces, that are multiples. There was a guy selling some kind of Python Patrol thing that was from an older, like 2015 con, and it was $2,500. I have no problem passing on that all day, every day, because it's just a repaint of an existing vehicle. It doesn't scratch an itch for me on any level. The person that comes with it is like Pythonized Lamprey or something, just like nothing. I feel nothing for that. I don't want it, I don't need it, and I never will. But my weakness is figures that are, unique characters that don't have other ones. So again, I'm trying really hard to justify how much I paid for this. I don't owe you guys anything. This is what I paid for it. The only person I have to answer to is my wife, who will hopefully not listen to this episode. So that was my last big purchase. I spent a lot of money at this con. It will take me a good probably half of the year to kind of dig myself out of that hole. But again, it's one of those things where you're like, these are single-handedly the best deals I'm going to get on this stuff, until Kentuckiana, which is kind of the deal. I'm basically going to just build my credit back up, try to get everything paid back off, and then I'll be flipping a switch and start to save up for Kentuckiana, because it'll be in the summertime. It's not going to go full stop for me. I can't just full stop. If I could full stop, I would have full stopped 10 years ago and would be living in a much nicer house. But I'm definitely going to slow down. I'm actually going to spend a lot of time. One of the things that I learned as I was bringing this stuff home is that I have a kind of a piece of my vehicle collection blocked off with comic book boxes. And so my wants list was actually kind of severely outdated, simply because I could get to this part of my room and see what I had. So I ended up buying some stuff that it turns out I basically already had. I bought an All-Striker, and I have an All-Striker. I bought a Cobra Asp. I found a Cobra Asp. I think those are the only two things I bought that were just straight up duplicates in 1-for-1. The All-Striker was complete, and I think that Asp is as well. It's unusual because, I'm not going to get into this right now, but the All-Striker that I had and the All-Striker that I bought are both clearly vintage ones, but they have different stamping numbers on the bottom. I know that there's a ton of variants in that type of stuff, and I couldn't find any specific information that made me feel like, yes, I should keep this one over the other or keep them both, because there aren't a lot of running variations like that I think are unique enough to credit keeping another one. And I certainly don't need another All-Striker, because I've got, probably a dozen of them over the years. It's one of the most reused molds out there. But when I started making my checklist of vehicles that I needed from the vintage line, one of the things I learned very early on is that vehicles that got remade in the modern line, as soon as that stuff came out, I immediately just stopped looking for the vintage version. So a lot of stuff I've collected over the last 5 years in the vintage run, vehicle-wise, especially the cheaper end stuff, is always stuff that I hesitate to say superior, but at the very least cleaner, modern versions of. The All-Striker, the Conquest, even the Rattler and the Sky Striker were not things I had in my collection because I bought the modern ones. And I've had them for so long. So all of that stuff is stuff that I've been looking for a while. But I'm finally kind of starting to close that gap. I don't have a complete tally yet. But after this weekend, it's the first time I really have woken up and said, you know what? I think the complete vintage vehicle run for me is I can kind of see the end in sight. I went through a big phase where I was buying play sets. I think I've knocked almost all of that out. Now I've gone through that phase where I'm looking for those little dumb backpacks, the little motorized kits, and I knocked a bunch of those out this week. And now the lower end vehicles, All-Striker Asp, Cobra Night Landing, Sharks, stuff that's like $25-$30 at these shows, I've started to knock a lot of that stuff out. When I have a full tally, because I'm moving a lot of stuff around this week, when I have a full tally on how many things I have left, I'll let you guys know, because when we get close to the countdown, it's going to be pretty exciting. Having said that, there's almost an entire set of Night Force vehicles out there that I don't have. I can't imagine there will be anything. It'll come down to just that stuff. I'll have to go to a show. I will have to look for a Night Boomer that's at a reasonable price, and I'll have to buy it and only it. But, if I'm down to just 5 vehicles, and it's just those 5 vehicles, that's what I'm going to work on. My goal, as always, has been get one of everything. And it's different than my figure collection, because my figure collection started in 1984 as a child. I went into it with a bunch of stuff. Most of my vehicles have not survived my adult years because I got rid of a bunch of stuff that was so incomplete I thought I'll never need this, which I don't regret. I only really regret not keeping a lot of the parts off, the little parts to use as I buy them now. But since I've gotten serious about vehicles, I've said no fooling around, buy them complete. as much as possible all the time, mark them off, and move on. The figures are different. I think if you buy any G.I. Joe figure and it's incomplete, as long as it's not a defining characteristic, a helmet or a very specific gun, who cares? I don't care. I could always go back and complete those figures later, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. If I've got a Crazy Legs and he doesn't have his parachute or he doesn't have a scope, if he doesn't have anything, I don't care. I just want Crazy Legs because I love the character. But I'm a figure-driven guy. So I took a different approach to collecting vehicles. I want them to be complete. I want to mark them off. On to the next thing. And the things that I buy, like the Crossfire and stuff that has been in my collection my whole life, I make a list of what I need. I try to compare the odds of how much stuff is missing, how much is that going to cost me, should I just buy another one, which I've done several times, which I did this weekend. I bought, that Sky Patrol Shark I had, but I thought, by the time I buy the canopy, 2 missiles, the guns, forget it. It's only $25-$30. Let's just start over. And then maybe I'll recoup a small amount of that, selling the shell that I have. So anyway, that was Winterfest. I specifically didn't mention anybody by name until the end because there are so many wonderful and great friends that we meet, see, and hang out with at Winterfest in Kentuckiana that I just want to say thank you to Greg Crocart and his wife Natalie. Of course, Jason and Joel from Order of Battle, 2 of our best friends, out there. We love them, and I'm sure you guys know that as well. They're the other side of us. I love them tremendously, and I always love hanging out with them, which we only get to do at these shows. Of course, Todd Henderson from Destro's Toy Den, one of my other favorite vendors. Patrick and John, who were listeners that wrote into the show and said, hey, we're coming up and we want to hang out with you. And I had a lovely time meeting them. They're actually the guys that were like, hey, you've got to check out this dude that's selling, he didn't say, he's not the guy that was like Dorkside Toys Inventory. I don't want to put him on blast because that wasn't him. But he was like, we bought a bunch of great stuff. It's extremely marked down. You've got to go check it out. And so I had a wonderful time meeting and interacting with them. We essentially absorbed them into our group. And I look forward to hanging out with them in later shows as well.
We got to hang out with them after the show a lot and really got to talk and learning how they met and their Joe story and how they kind of coalesced into a little group. And I believe Patrick's friend's name was John, and I apologize if I got that wrong. But got to eat with them after the show, and it was just so cool meeting a couple people that were also so into the things that we were into. Not just Joe, but comics, shows, movies. We talked about other podcasts, not just Joe podcasts, but other weird things that we were into. So it was just such a cool experience getting to talk to someone and getting to talk toys and just hang out and have time to just enjoy some social activity. And then, we'll see them hopefully again at Kentuckiana in the summer.
When you start a show like this, you think, man, I hope we get a listener base that we can have some interactivity with, because that's another part of it, is that you want to find people that have the same passion as you, because there's a kinship that comes with that. And never in my wildest dreams did I think we would meet listeners, make friends of them, that's a big deal for me. Somebody that doesn't leave the house often, doesn't really have a lot of social interaction. And I really do get a lot of that at these shows. So it's wonderful. It really does mean a whole lot to me. And last but not least, Casey and Matt from Podcast from the Pit, our good friends who we hadn't seen in a while, went out to eat with us for lunch when the show was all over. Again, just the social connectivity of these conventions is, for a lot of people, outweighs any of the toy buying part of it. I'm a toy focused guy. I love, I live to look at and purchase toys. But if I had no money, I would still be at these events 100% just to hang out with these people that are my friends, my very, very good friends who I love tremendously. So another great show in the books. I had a great time. They had posted that this was record setting for both vendors and attendees. And so I am hopeful that all of the vendors that set up there had a great weekend, did well financially, will continue to come back. We'll come to Kentuckiana, which will be the bigger show. I'm not 100% sure how this will expand, because based on the room, unless they set it up in a second room, which almost defeats the purpose. But I'm interested in seeing what they'll do for Kentuckiana. It'll be their 10th year, I'm told. I've been going for about 5 years. So, yeah, I'm interested in seeing what they do for Kentuckiana. And, I'm excited to go back again, see all my friends, buy more toys, accrue more debt. Set for July 29th. That means the Kernel package or whatever you want to call it will be that 28th, the night before, that Friday. Yep. So put it in your calendars. It's really one of the best. I mean, it is a small show, and in this area, it's one of the only shows. It's certainly one of the only ones that I can kind of easily attend without having to juggle a lot of like, who's going to watch my kid? I can be back in my own bed that evening. So I treasure it. It's just like, it's very important to me, and I want it to continue to be successful and grow if at all possible. Like I can't say enough good things about it.
I'm going to be honest. With the new location, as far as just pure Joe-centric booths, it is narrowing the gap to Joe Fest. It's still not as big, but it is getting closer. It is getting closer. It's definitely...
Which is crazy to think about.
It's definitely getting better, and there is room to improve. Even just in the main showroom, I think they could easily fit another, 5 or 6 booths probably.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure something out. And if they do open up that second room and it fills up, that's going to be a pretty big show. And I'm going to do everything in my power to promote it. We have no connection to Kentuckiana if there was ever any confusion. Just to be clear, nobody pays us crap. We don't get paid. Our opinion is 100% honest because we have nothing to lose. I just want them to be successful. It's a show that means a lot to me and has been very beneficial in multiple ways. So here's to you, Kentuckiana. I wish you the best, and I hope you continue to grow. We will certainly be back in July. Jaren, do you have any last thoughts or comments as we wrap up?
No, just, once again to touch on it, man, the social aspect. I went into this show with the smallest budget I've ever had for any G.I. Joe show, and I had even better, every time it just gets better because, your relationships with all these people build. Like, it's now when I see people that they actually know who I am instead of me just being the awkward guy, like, hi, I like toys, you like toys, let's talk. Like when I go up and Todd and Greg and Natalie, and then not even just that, but like Aaron from Roma and Kaufman from Toy Department, like people that, they know me at that show. They're not going to know me if I see them on the street, most likely. But when we get to those shows, they kind of know who's going to be at it. And even the guy from Marauders, the couple of guys, I had really great conversations with them. It's just such a cool experience, and you get to kind of learn from people who have similar interests, but also way different life experiences. So it's a really cool event. I definitely recommend you coming out, trying it out. If you are close enough to where you feel like you can make the trip, you absolutely should.
Yeah, I'll just say lastly as we close out the show that if you make the decision to travel and you're unsure what you're getting into, drop us an email beforehand. We'll meet up with you. I'd like nothing more than to meet listeners of the show and hang out with you. If you got no other friends there, you have at least 2 friends there. That's me and Jaren. So for both of us here, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back in 2 short weeks, and we got to get back on the old comic book grind. So we need to start preparing for that basically tomorrow. But we look forward to talking to you then, or anything's available for discussion here on Anything Joe's.